picked up a message or two. We've been I'm actually having some surgery this week. So if you've noticed, we've had a little bit of a weird schedule. We did an interview yesterday. Going to be live today and live tomorrow, and then Thursday we'll probably have something recorded for you as well. But we'll be here every day, so we want you to join us. But today, at this moment, you do get to call. Let me give the number out. It is the number we always use, and that's 844-940-2774. That's 844-940-2774 to get on the program live, and we can talk about life. So I hope your life is going well. We are still in day 8,642 of the lockdown, but we're getting kind of used to it. One of the good things that's come out of this is that we've started this program. I get to visit with you guys, which I really, really love. And I want to thank you for those of you who have been sharing the show with your friends, because that's how we're going to know there's an audience enough to keep doing this. We really enjoy it. I do, my team does, but we need to know that, people want to come play with us. So share it with your friends, and that's how we will know that. Okay, so one more time for the number, and then I'm going to do what I always do in the beginning of the program, talk a little bit about a concept that might help us think about life a little better. And the number, once again, 844-940-2774 to get on the air to talk about your life. Okay, so here is something that I want to share with you. All right. And I was thinking the other day, I was actually talking with someone about working through some grief. And it was interesting to watch the process that they were going through, because the grief was coming really pretty late in terms of that what they were grieving had happened a while back. And they felt like they didn't think that it really was that painful. They thought they should have been painful. It was a significant occurrence, but they thought they went through it and didn't really feel much, and noticed that the world had changed in some ways and the structure of life and all that. But they were surprised that they kind of like it just hadn't really affected them as much as they thought. Well, here we were sometime later, and what they found was that it started to emerge, and it would emerge at really random moments. They'd be watching something on TV or at a movie, or well, at a movie. In COVID, you don't go to the movies, you're watching a movie, or in a conversation or a reminder of something. And the grief of the person that they lost, it would just come, and they go, "This was however long ago." And they were surprised. Well, actually, there is a technical reason for that, and the technical description of that is that they had developed, and here's the words I want you to learn. They had developed the capacity for mourning, the capacity, the ability to mourn or to grieve. Said another way, that their mind and their heart and their soul was in a place, it was ready to do this. Before then, it hadn't been ready. So you can't force a mind into putting its arms around embracing something that it's really not ready to handle. We think about like medically, I've been going through a couple of days here, getting all sorts of things checked out, because they want to make sure if somebody's going to have surgery, which is kind of a grieving, you're giving them some stuff, right? That your body has the capacity to go through that process. Well, when you're grieving and you're letting go of things and you're processing stuff, you have to make sure that the heart, mind, and soul have the capacity to go through that. If people don't have the capacity to go through the mourning process and the grieving process, then can't really do it. So it gets stuck. It goes somewhere else. They get detached. Or they get disengaged from the feelings or whatever. So what had happened with this person? I want to focus on a couple of two or three things that built their ability to face their feelings. All right. One of them was that they had gotten to a place, a loss is a little bit like, especially if it's a substantial loss that kind of holds you up in life, which our close relationships do. It's a little bit like letting go to grieve. We let go of one trapeze because we're grabbing another one, or there's a safety net under us. And we really can't let go if we're going to fall into an abyss. Okay? We can't do that. And so, what had happened in this person's life was they had had enough time where they had really, really developed some pretty deep, you know, significant pillars, you should say, of a support system where their mind and their heart and their soul felt like if I start to face these feelings, somebody's going to catch me. Speaking of catching me, I want to give you the number one more time, 844-940-2774 to call into the program. I'll catch you if you call. 844-940-2774. And so when their heart and mind and soul was feeling that kind of support underneath, it's sort of like if somebody's helping you climb off of a wall, or your legs broke, so they'll hold you up and say, "Okay, let go. We got you." So that's a very intangible feeling that becomes very tangible when you get over that kind of the seesaw goes to that other side where you felt like, okay, somebody's got me. If I let go, if I let down, somebody's got me. So that's one thing. Well, here's another one. The other one was sometimes when you lose somebody significant, the whole structure of your life disappears, because this is how you spent your time, or dependent on them for certain functions. Sometimes it made life work and all of that. Sometimes it takes a little while to where you're in a strong enough place just with the functions that relationship provided for you to be able to grieve it. Many times that's why somebody, runs away and runs away, leaves home, in at the end of adolescence from a lot of painful stuff that it's going to take a lot of grieving to process all that. But they're going into adulthood in those early 20s or whatever. They really can't look back and face that yet because they haven't landed anywhere and established a structure of their own home, if you will, or their own life that, you know, home used to provide, even though it's problematic. So now, if you've got the structure and the routine and things that make life stable, it's hard to grieve in an unstable life. So stability is part of this. And then one more that I'll give you is this. It's very difficult to properly grieve someone who, in your mind, is all good or all bad, because that's not the real person, right? And so if we idealize somebody, many times you see people do this they're in the romanticized version of a relationship. They're falling in love with somebody and everything's all good, and then that person gets early disinterested or ditches them or something. They can't ever get over it because they're still seeing them as all good, and they never really got to know them enough to really put the good and the bad together to have a real person there. And sometimes idealized figures, people can't have they really have a hard time getting past it. Nobody ever is going to measure up, for one, and it just doesn't work in the brain. Well, the other side is if somebody's all bad, if we haven't forgiven them, if we can't integrate sometimes, the conflictual, ambivalent emotions, we're stuck in that conflict. Somebody dies or goes away that you have a hard, connection with, a difficult kind of just, difficult connection. Very hard to grieve that because you stay in the protest mode, stay in that kind of, still, it shouldn't be, they shouldn't be in that anger mode. And it's hard to let go. So all these things come together and we start to get there. We get to a different place when we're seeing them realistically, and we're starting to be able to even forgive some stuff and not, be as seeking revenge and all of that. And we feel like we got some support. And there's some good things going on now. And then generally the grieving starts to happen. So I say all that to say this, if there's some grieving that you find difficult to do, then maybe number one, you need to find the right support to help you through that. And number two, you might need to get in a pretty, more stable situation. It's hard to do surgery if we're bouncing along a bumpy road. We need a stable situation. And then thirdly, to begin to really look at who we've lost realistically, and both the positive and the negative aspects of that. So, little few thoughts on grieving there, and developing the capacity for mourning. And let me say, let me give out the number one more time. It's 844-940-2774. We had a little different time on this program than we normally are. So some of our callers might not have known that, and they're just now joining us. 844-940-2774. This would be a good time for you to call because I do think we have a couple lines open. 844-940-2774. What was I saying about the grief? It it's a good thing to know because grief, in one sense, grief is the only real. I got to really think about this. This is this is put this in your kind of mostly true category. I don't want to wake up at 3 in the morning and go, that's not exactly right. But it's kind of mostly kind of sort of right. Okay. Grief is pain, right? But I'll put it this way, and this will be right. It is it's one of the only kinds of pain that heals pain. Grief is one of the only kinds of pain that actually heals pain. Heals. It is the healing process. Because as you take in experience, you metabolize it. And then you break it apart like you break down food, and your body takes the parts of that experience and relationship and holds on to it and keeps it as either learnings or wisdom or even love that you hang on to, that you internalize from that person's care, or things that you took from that. We take that good on with us. And then what do? Just like food, we keep the good, turns into new cells and muscles and all of that. And we eliminate the waste. Okay. When you eat food and eliminate the waste, that's the stuff that's not useful to your body. So we go through experiences in life and we take the useful parts away from that, even the painful ones. We take useful learnings at least, or wisdom or maturity. We learn, well, I'll never make that mistake again. Whatever it was, you take the good things that we can out of that experience, but you must eliminate the waste. It's like food. So how do we eliminate waste? Basically, through these little orifices right here and this little orifice right here. You cry it out. The tears wash it away, but it's got to flow out. It's got to move. Okay. And then you speak it out. You cry it out. You put language to it. You put words to it. And through those very, very simple processes that some of my favorite verses in the Bible talk about, weep with those who weep. See, when we cry with somebody and their eyes meet our eyes, what happens? You start to tear up, and then you start to talk to them. And as the proverb says, that person draws out even the deeper waters of your pain, and then it gets eliminated. We leave it behind through flooding out the pipes, and then you cry until there's no more crying. And that's how it works. And we'll go to the phones, but I want to close with this one passage from the book of Ecclesiastes that I found very, very, very incredibly profound. This was before, going back to the history of psychology, by and large, we really started to understand the mechanisms of grief first from the early work of Freud, because Freud did a lot of work with people processing stuff. And he talked about complicated bereavement, which I was referring to earlier, and all of that. But basically, what he and some others found out was that there were some emotional problems, that the expression, getting the stuff out of you, really, really did help, and it healed. Right? A lot of people don't like that idea and try to dispute it, but we know that from a million different ways. So processing helps. Okay, that's what the Bible says. You know, what's interesting though is psychology has gone on to research this and prove it in 10,000 ways that processing grief is a good thing. Go all the way back to the book of Ecclesiastes, and Solomon said this in chapter 7. I think it's the New American Standard that is the version of these Hebrew words that I think say it best. And it puts it this way. He says, it's better to go into the house of grieving or mourning than into the house of pleasure. It's better to go work on your grief than go to a house of pleasure to avoid pain. Because the verse after that says this, because if you do, a sad face can make a heart happy. In other words, if we would stop, going just trying to party to get away from the hurt, right? One more party, one more sexual escapade, one more, experience to make me feel good so I won't feel this pain. And instead go into the house of pain, or that circle, that support group, that grief group, that therapist's office, that friend, go into that place of processing pain. It says, if you do that, then a sad face can make a heart happy. In other words, start to feel our feelings, and then the depressed heart gets lighter. And that's how grief is the pain that heals pains. Okay? A few little thoughts there on grief, and that's our lesson for the day. So we're going to go to the phones, and all the way to Montreal, our first international caller of the day, Janice. I think Janice is on the line. Janice, welcome to the Dr. Cloud Show.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, it's good to have you.
I can't believe I got through. This is so exciting.
You did. You are now officially on the air. So what's your question?
Well, as I was asked what the question was, it was about anger and impatience. But then I was listening to you talk about grief. Sorry, I'm gonna cry. I wonder if they're intertwined. I wonder if the grief and the anger have something to do with one another.
Maybe. Tell me what brought your question up.
Well, my mom passed away February of 2018. And I grew up without a father, so she was really my only, I guess, parental,
Yeah.
And it was very difficult growing up because I grew up in a large family, and I don't know how to really say all this. That my stepfather did, certain things to us when we were younger, and he passed away when I was 6, and then we were left with my mom, and my mom, I think, somehow maybe knew, and she was so deeply in love with my stepfather that she just was in denial about what he did, and she just kind of turned on me, and it was, so I wonder if it's all connected some way, the anger and the...
Yeah. Well, it could be. Do you feel anger directly towards them, or are you saying you just have a problem with anger in life?
Well, certain things will happen, and then, God in his incredible grace, he shows me that the way that person is treating me,
Mm.
that's not really that person, it's my mother.
So God has revealed that to you.
I think so, yes, because
Yeah.
I'll give you like an example. In my work, there's my boss, of course, and then there's my coworkers. And somehow God has shown to me that my boss is like a reflection of my mother, and all these employees are like my brothers and sisters. It sounds weird, but
No, I get it.
you know,
You know what? It's very insightful. Well, if God showed you, of course it is. But a lot of times I've seen so many scenarios that people don't realize, why am I overreacting to this? And they start to put the players together, put it up on a flip chart or something. And they'll go, oh my gosh, this is my mom. This is my dad. That's my sister. That's my brother. And they're talking about the team that they're on at work. No wonder they're going
yes,
crazy.
yes,
Right. So
yes,
what
exactly. And
that makes total sense. But so what's your question? I love the insight that you're gaining on this. What is the question?
um, where do I start? Where do I, you know, what's how
Well,
do I
what?
stop being angry? Or
I'm not sure
it's so
stopping.
deep and complex.
Well, no. I'm going. It's like you say, how do I stop being angry? Sometimes the way you stop being angry is you have to be angry, right? So stopping sometimes isn't the way out, but getting the anger aligned is the way out. So here's what I mean by that. Let me answer your question though very simply. How do you start? I would say almost exactly like the way you've started right now on this call with us. See, remember what I talked about earlier in the program, getting time to this grief process. I said we need to have somebody on the other side of the conversation that understands and that cares. Okay. Secondly, we have some sort of structure to do it in that kind of stabilizes. Okay, so we have a time and a place here. You got a safe place, and this is why we're here, as a purpose, and all that. And then thirdly, you start to focus on what were the real things objectively about the people involved and the experience, and then you start to talk and see if when you say, how do I start, if you remember back, just if we roll the hit rewind here just a few minutes, as soon as you started talking, remember you started to kind of feel it a little bit. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the crying.
Well, yeah, that tells me it's very much present. It's very much accessible to you if you get in the right setting. So I would say
Right.
number one, do what you've done here with me. Find a good counselor, find a good grief
Okay.
group. A grief group would be great because they have you explore all these
I think the
dynamics.
thing.
But go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. I think one of the most difficult things is that before my mom passed away, something happened that's another thing too, that because, like, for example, she was dying, and a couple of weeks before she died, it was her birthday, and I called her, and one thing that I kind of always felt is she rejected me a lot. And I called her up on her birthday to wish her happy birthday, and I sort of felt like she was trying to blow me off, like, oh, I'm going to go and eat. And then I just said, okay, then, bye. And I just, and then I felt really bad, and I tried calling her back to say, like, let's try to have a nice conversation here. And I just said, I didn't like how we hung up. And she just, like, slammed the phone in my face.
Oh,
And
no.
I was just like, and then, sorry, and then I kept trying to call back over and over again, like, Mom, and she kept picking up and hanging up, picking up and hanging up. And then finally my niece was there and she picked up that last time, and I just said to her, like, what's going on over there? Like, why is mom doing this? And so my mom got on the phone and I just said, Mom, why are you doing this? And she said, do you need a Webster's dictionary every time I speak to you? And then it was again click. And 3 weeks later she died. It was the last conversation I ever had with my mother.
Wow. That is awful.
Yeah.
So
And I never got to say bye. I never got to, it was just even in death it ended in such a
picture of
bad
kind of the whole thing right there, even in that one frame, right? It's like the ways that
like even in death and it's like, okay, was I wrong to call her back? And and I tried to do the right thing, and I don't know, I think all of there's so much.
Yeah, there's so much to this. Let me give you, I'm just gonna list a few things, and I want you to take these with you and really get in a good place. I'd like for you to just see a good counselor that can unpack all this. But if you think about it, kind of what happened in that call, it's almost like a picture of sort of like the things God was revealing. It's like there's a history, and
Yes.
you put a picture frame around this last call, and what do you have? You have a daughter trying to access mom, right? Which you did,
right,
for a long time. You tried to access her, and then
right.
You run into a barrier. You ran into different barriers with her at different times in your life when you tried to access. But then you had this connection that sometimes was good, and you wanted to, value, and it just couldn't ever get fully processed. And then you go away from it feeling like, well, was this me? Was it? Did I do something? It leaves you with so much self. Yeah, that self blame and self doubt. And earlier, I was talking about complicated bereavement, and I said it's very difficult to let go of somebody until we processed all of the good and the bad. And so I would want you to find a very, very good supportive, relationship, friends, counselor, grief group, all the above, and just start to unpack this. And you're going to get a lot of feedback from them about um, the obvious that you can't feel that all of us can see, is that no, this isn't your fault. I mean, you were trying to access her. You were trying to give her a gift. You were trying to talk to her. And I would also conjecture, I don't know her. She could have just turned into this person. But if she did that then, usually that's not something somebody learns how to do that day. There's probably a history of difficult interactions.
It is.
Yeah. And so you're carrying, you're carrying all that with you. So yes, it makes sense that you would feel you'd be walking around with some anger and some unresolved feelings and all of that. And my encouragement would be to get with somebody, talk about things we talked about here, to unpack it, but also begin to process the good and the bad, and kind of let her own what she never did own, right, directly, but that you have to let her own so you don't walk around feeling all of it like it's your fault. Okay. I've got to go to some other callers, but I really, really appreciate your call and sharing this with us. It's so vulnerable. The good thing is, I'm going to tell you this. I started the show with, sometimes people have to build a capacity for mourning, and just the way equipment works in the head. I'm going to tell you, the fact that you can talk about this and process it and continue to look at it and observe it and all of that, that's a lot of capacity. There's a lot of strength.
Oh, thank you.
A lot of strength that you have inside. And I'm sure God's a big part of that. And I continue to talk to him about this too. You're welcome. Okay.
I really
So,
appreciate you. God bless you. I love this show.
well, keep tuning in and hope to talk to you again sometime. Thank you for your call.
God bless you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, wow. You know, what, what we learn when we tell our stories. I was talking about earlier about this grief process. Sometimes you have to like access it. She goes, "Where do I start?" But just in the telling of her story, she started. And sometimes that's what you need to do to get started. And you're going to find that there's a treasure hunt. Because see, here's the paradox of this is we we push our pain away and we try to get away from our pain so we feel better and can function better, but we don't realize that there's no such thing as pushing away pain by itself in a little box where you just take it and put it in a storage unit and say, I'll come back in 5 years. Because the pain is attached to different aspects of ourselves, which involves different strengths and talents and gifts and all sorts of other things. So it all kind of gets bundled together, and part of yourself goes away and needs to be brought back into an integration of the whole person so you have access. And I think what, all of us ultimately end up finding if we do this is as you process your pain, you not only find your pain, but you find more of yourself, and more of the self that God created you to be becomes accessible to you. And you find strength you didn't know you had. And you find sometimes the ability to dream again, the ability to desire, the ability to plan, the ability to have a vision, the ability to actually find strength to execute on that. Many, many other capacities that sometimes hidden in this ball of yarn, called pain or abandonment or grief or loss or anger or hurt or woundedness. We start to bring all that up. And wait, there's treasure in here too, because there's you in there. Your heart is in there. And that's why this grief process is very, 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 very important. Very important sometimes to get into. Okay, let me give you the number again. It is, gosh, we got so what's fun about this show. I'm gonna confess something to you guys here that I really like. One of the things about when I used to do call in, radio for a long time, and back in this, you had to be in the studio, right? You got to be there every day, and so it really made other projects really difficult to do. Well, here I am on the road going, having knee surgery, and I'm obviously, in a guest place here, and everywhere is a studio. So this is really cool. I can hang out with you guys wherever we go. But I need to give the number 844-940-2774. That's 844-940-2774. We're going to go back to the callers here. Rita's calling us from Oregon. It sounds like we have another situation with a mother. Rita, welcome to the program.
Hello. Yes, my
Hey.
question is I'm having a hard time handling the emotions about putting my mom in assisted living and her anger towards me because of it.
How old is your mom?
She's 96, and she was
96.
diagnosed with Alzheimer's about 2 years ago, and
Wow.
she had
She had a
she had
long, full bunch of years there with no issues.
yeah, and she's still full of fire too.
Some of that maybe not so much fun fire, I would bet. What's happening?
No, well, of course she doesn't remember, why and why she can't live alone, and I've become her trigger and her target for the anger and the blame for her being in assisted living. She doesn't want to be there. She's used to living on her own. She's lived alone for, probably 30 years since my father died. And she's been there 2 years now, and it got to the point where I can't even talk to her. If I talk to her on the phone and I try to, validate her feelings or distract her, she immediately goes back to blaming me and ends up with her hanging up on me. So I had to hire a care manager to help me, and she was going and seeing her and kind of helping her through the adjustment of assisted living. But she still, I can't, I'm having a really hard time with the emotions of not being able to do anything that makes her happy. And no matter what I say, she just hangs up on me. And it's not what I had pictured. I thought having her close by where we'd be able to enjoy each other and do things together is totally not going to happen, it looks like. So I'm just having a hard time. Plus, she wants to be here. She wants to live in my home, and I can't do that. So I feel like I feel bad about that, and it feels like I should be able to do that, and that it's unloving if I don't do that. So I'm just struggling with a lot of them.
Yeah, of course. What is when you feel like you should be able to do that, why do you feel like you should be able to do that? Explain that one.
Because I wonder if she'd be happier being around us and, being out. We live out on a little bit of acreage, and she likes to be in nature, and she likes my dog, and those kind of things make her happy.
Why did you need to put her in there?
Well, at the time when she moved here, she originally was going to move closer by us when we retired, and then when she was diagnosed and couldn't live alone, we kind of sped up the process, and I went ahead and moved up to Oregon and moved her. She came with us, and she stayed with us for a while. She stayed with me about 9 months, and we talked, I talked to her about assisted living and everything, and she, of course, with Alzheimer's, they remember and then they forget. But from all the reading I did and the progression, I was worried about getting her settled before it progressed, and she would need extra care that I knew I couldn't handle. So that was one of the reasons.
Well,
plus, I have. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just there was that. I was thinking of, what the future was going to hold for her as it progressed, and then my own health issues, and then I had some other family issues going on where we were in the middle of a mental health crisis with my daughter. So I was under a lot of stress when she was here, and plus she actually wasn't happy here. She was, complaining then and wanting to go home, and so we
she
thought
wasn't
that
happy there. She wasn't happy there either, and it wasn't working, right?
No.
Yeah. So
but
here's
I feel bad
here's why.
Able to do. I should be able to.
Should be able to. Okay. Now I want you to listen to that. Huh? Well, here's why. Well, here's why I ask you. Okay. I didn't have any doubt that there were good reasons, because you're caring for, you're doing a bunch of stuff. This is a caring person I'm talking to here that's gone to some length to try to make the best situation possible for her mom, and is still trying. So I know I'm not dealing with a self-centered woman who doesn't care about her mother, who is just trying to farm her off. I know that's not what we're talking about here. So here's the problem. Because you are loving, okay, what happens, we're talking about grief today, and this is a form of grief that you're in right now. What happens in grief is there is this, have you ever heard of the stages of grief? You ever heard of that at all?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it's not exactly linear like maybe when it was first proposed, but there are these components. And one of the components that's in those stages is called bargaining and protest. Okay. So when we have to face a really painful reality, which you're having to do, you are losing your mom in the way that you used to could have her, and she is losing her capacity to have life in the way that she used to have life. Okay. Those are
Mhm.
and I'm going to use a phrase here. Okay. And I don't mean this in
Yes.
any way insensitively. I mean it literally because I want you to hear the words. Those are the cold, hard facts. Okay. She's
Mhm.
96 years old and her brain doesn't work anymore. All right. That is a cold reality to have to lean into. What I mean by cold is it just hurts. It's just awful. And so when we have to deal with some reality like that, the love inside of you for her and for you, your sake and her sake as well, it's protesting. It shouldn't be this way. No, it's bargaining. I can make this better. I ought to, and if I can, I should, and I didn't, and I ought to. And what happens is we start to bargain with reality, thinking if I tried harder, if I were different, if I poured more resources into this, if, to ward off that moment where it hits us, wow, life is different with mom now. This is cold and it's hard, but it's a fact. She just can't do normal life anymore. And that's a very, very sad thing. And so my concern with you is that in the in the protest and bargaining phase of grief, it gets turned into you should have. And I want you to there's two things. The reason I said, why'd you put her in there was not for me to learn that there was good reason. I knew there was good reason as best I could know. I wanted you to be reminded. Remember, I said earlier in the show, it's hard to let go of something if we're not looking at the real picture, the good and the bad. You have
Mhm.
got to keep in front of you all the time. I had to put her in there because of this reason and this reason and this reason and this reason and this reason. Because that's going to be a big part of your being able to let go of the deep desire for her to still be somebody that she's not able to be anymore. And then that's going to be sad. And so at that point, if we can get past all of the feelings of this, then you'll be able to ask yourself the question, what is the best thing I can do for her? And that's probably in consultation with her doctors or whoever's there. And sometimes the best thing is to go visit or listen to a phone call and just let them gripe at you and say, yeah, I know
Mhm.
it's really hard. Okay, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow, mom, and then hang up. They get something out of that. It works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the opposite. Sometimes the doctors will say it's probably not best to call right now. It's too agitating. Cognitively, she functions better when she doesn't hear from family. I'm seeing that happen as well. But when you're clear of I should have done more and I could have done more and then you can get to the grief because ultimately the bottom line is this. And I had to go through it. I mean, I sure this had to go through it with my father, who I was very, very close to. In the last few years, we just had to put him in a home. We couldn't do it.
Right.
We just couldn't do it. And it was sad. So I'm going to invite you into getting similar to other situations we talked about today. I'd love to see you in a group with other people that have gone through this and are going through this because everybody starts to realize this is normal and get away from
Mhm.
the blame. And then you can have a strategy with the doctors of what's best for her. Should I talk to her? How much? Should I not? How much? Should I try to engage her? Should I try to, so you got to get the emotions done and then the reality, and then you get a strategy to love her the best you can. And so it's not continually tapping into the grief. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. That's real helpful.
Good. So, because I want you to this is a lousy word, but it's just true. I mean, I want you to be free from the parts of this that are inoperable, and be free to love her the best you can, which may be obviously limited to her own capacities of what she can receive and what she can't, and maybe just to listen to where she is and wish her well. And as you're doing that, hold on to the memory of who she used to be. And sometimes that's the best we can do.
Okay.
But God bless you
Yeah,
for
that's
taking care of her needs. And she's physically, she's safe, she's got care, and you're doing what you can.
yep, doing the best I can. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. Help clear out all the emotions so I could see through it more.
Good.
So, thank you
And
very much. I appreciate it.
get around some, you're very welcome, and get around some people like me. And, you know, if my family, my siblings, we were all sitting there with you, we would go, yeah, we remember that. That was hard. He's passed on now, but we know that, you know, just a lot of situations. You see this, you know, it's not only in dementia and people in old age. You know, people go through this with teenagers sometimes. I mean, they have to be in a residential treatment center, or they have to be in a hospital. You know, or the capacity to keep them safe, the capacity to deal, the capacity for help. Maybe not. Sometimes even isn't in a home. Sometimes. So these are hard situations. But when you know that you've loved them the best, there's two factors. You've loved them the best you can, and you've loved them to the best, and this is big, to their ability to utilize the love that you have. Now, maybe you have a lot more and different kinds of love that you could give to her if she had the capacity to use it. And part of life is realizing the capacity that somebody has to utilize what we want to give them, and knowing that sometimes they can only utilize this much and not that much. And that's its own little grief process. Okay, thank you for calling. Let me give the numbers out one more time. It's 844-940-2774. In the Dr. Cloud Show on the road, we are on the road today. And I'll be on the road all week and for a while, but still checking in with you. Sometime we'll be posting the time, so watch for them. You have a couple of interviews and a few more things. Let me remind you also and let me ask the team, did the new boundaries.me upgrades happen? Is that a yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, guys. Jessica, are you there?
I am here.
Yeah, we're excited.
Okay, let me introduce y'all to my team. Who all do we have there? We got Jessica, and I thought I heard Albie. Is Greg there?
I'm here.
Okay, this is something we have been working on for all of you boundaries.me members. You know that you've asked for some things that we were having difficulty getting built into the platform and the way it works. One of those is much more robust search abilities. There are paths now for different tracks of the areas you want to develop in life. Guys, why don't you just tell them real quick what they can find that's new in boundaries.me?
Sure, there's assessments. So you can go through and kind of answer some questions, see what you really want to focus on. And then we'll give you suggestions on both courses or paths. If you're looking for a specific issue, say anxiety or dealing with anger or difficult conversations, you can just type that in and boom, you're going to go right to the courses.
That is, we've heard that a lot. There's so many. If you've never been to boundaries.me or you've never tried it, go on there and subscribe. You get a free trial if you're not a member. But there's around 60 something courses on there, and there's so many different things. And part of the problem with this is, if you're struggling with depression, well, certainly there's courses on depression and what we do, but also, well, if I'm dealing with a difficult personality, in a significant relationship, that's depressing too. So that one gets loaded on there too. And so it's going to give you a menu of a lot of different things that you can check out about all sorts of specific problems. So thank you, team. I know you've been working on that for quite a while. There's so many complicated technology aspects of that, but it's all working now. You got that many videos, sort of like, building our own little mini Netflix here, because you can go watch these and now you can find what you're watching. Okay, so I wanted to announce that. Go to boundaries.me to find out more and become a subscriber. There's also communities on there that you can join that deal with the kind of things that maybe you are going through. We have probably time for at least one more call. Let's see. Where are we? Vanessa is there, calling from somewhere in Texas. Vanessa, welcome to the Dr. Cloud
Yes.
Show.
Hi, Dr. Cloud. Thank you so much for taking my call.
You're very welcome. How can I help you?
Thank you. Okay. It's related to the topic that you're talking about today. And I'm sorry, English is my second language.
Sounds great.
I went through a process of grieving for years. My dad took his life about 18 years ago. And I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. He was very violent. I guess he didn't go through a process of healing himself. So
how old were you
when
this happened?
I was 22.
22.
And it's been 18 years. And I did go through, anger. So I guess I planted a seed without knowing. I planted anger, and I felt very rejected from him all my life growing up. And when he decided to take his life, that put a burden in my life. So,
certainly, yeah.
I guess my question is, I'm sorry.
What did you mean when you said you planted the seed of anger? You mean after he killed himself, then you were angry at him?
Yes. Yes. I think I felt that I never had the opportunity to have a dad.
Right. It sounds like it.
I'm sorry. So it's been a process.
Yeah.
I think it still hurts, I guess, not having him around me, around my kids. And for some reason, without knowing, this is something God revealed to me about 2 years ago, that I was stonewalling my husband.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was giving him the responsibility of my dad to take care of me, or I don't know. My question is, what is my part? What are the steps that I can take to stop stonewalling people out of fear of rejection or abandonment?
It's a good question. Do you stonewall them when you get into a conflict, when they hurt you, or when they love you, or when does the stonewalling begin to happen?
I think when I feel rejected, not in the essence that they're rejecting me, but they rejected something I do.
Yeah. So let me ask one more question. What kind of work have you done? What kind of healing work have you done to process your whole, really, the life story of you and your dad?
I've never taken counseling, but I did go to the Word of God, and I prayed and I prayed and I trusted, and it seems like it's been God and myself going through this all years. that's the best I knew how to do. So
Okay.
he's been
Good.
great to me. He's been revealed a lot of things of me, and you know, he helped me go through that process.
Yeah. Has God told you at any point that you might need some help other than him?
Well, yes, I know there's people, but it seems like every time I reach to either a counselor or a pastor, it's not that I'm not getting the answers that I need. It's probably some people don't understand.
Yeah. Well, if let me suggest something to you.
Okay.
When the big question is about stonewalling, right? And that is
Mhm.
so understandable. And
Mhm.
especially the technical term for it, um, there's a word for this. I mean, you're getting into relationships now, and what happens is in those relationships, you're experiencing those relationships as if it's your dad, right? In other words, some of the themes, like when you get rejected, there's an as if feeling, right? This is, and you
Right.
don't necessarily go through this consciously, but it's sort of like
Mhm.
they reject you or do something maybe critical or disapproving, but it feels as if it feels the same that it did back then. And that's a much, much bigger pain than what's going on in the moment with your husband or a friend or somebody at church or, whatever. The technical
Right.
term, one of them is transference, that we transfer our feelings and our conflicts of somebody else onto the person in the present because of this other technical word called unfinished
Mhm.
business. So we have unfinished
Right.
emotions, unfinished healing. And so what we do is we take that to the next situation, and then unconsciously or consciously, we're trying to work that out. And these other people become players, actors in that play. See, the script's already written.
Mhm.
The script's written many years ago.
Right.
And it doesn't relate to the people in the present so much as it relates to him. And so my heart goes out to you for
Mhm.
a few reasons. You know, just the
Thank
you
you.
talked about a history of rejection, history of pain. That in and of itself needs to be talked about and healed and cared about and all those things. But then secondly, with somebody that
Right.
we love, and sometimes even more complicated than when we love somebody that we have a, a conflictual relationship with dies. And especially, and this is just true, there's so much research we know about this. When they die by
Mhm.
suicide, it
Yes.
gets even more complicated in your heart and mind and soul. There's so many
Yes.
dynamics that go into making that so difficult to resolve. And
Right.
I'm so I really feel for you in the pain that you had with your dad, the pain of losing him, but the pain of how you lost him. And
Right.
then all of this this stuff that's going on with your husband and other people of reliving those dynamics, and you're having, you stonewall them because you're trying to push away from all of that, and it hadn't been worked out yet. So here's what I was going to ask you about. Has God told you, you know, to talk to somebody else? I'm really, really, really so encouraged that you have a relationship with God. And I know, as you know, and as you found in other callers we've had today, and I've known this in my own life, that God does talk to us when we talk to Him, right? He's answered you, right? He's
Yes.
shown up. You know
Yes.
he's real. But if
Yes.
you said you went to it, you said you went to his word a lot. There's lots of
Yes.
encouragement there. But I'm going to share a few things from his word, his Bible, his message to you that are
Mhm.
very important as well. And this is God saying this, not me. That he says,
Okay.
remember what I said earlier? He says we need to weep with those who weep. There's
Mhm.
somebody needs to be sitting down with you that shows God's love and healing to you while you're going through this, and that's going to help resolve it. There's other
Okay.
people, it says that we need to heal the brokenhearted. You need some care
Mhm.
around you in order for this to be healed. It says that somebody wise has got to draw the deep waters out of your heart so they can, be processed and healed. So if you haven't found a counselor that understands this, then have you been to a professional licensed counselor?
I did try once,
One?
but yes, that was a long time ago when I was angry. When I guess my reaction to it was to push down all my emotions and my thoughts, and because I had to be tough,
Yeah. Well, that
and so I don't think it was the right
maybe not the
time
right time.
back
Could not be
then.
the right time, but also sometimes it's not the right counselor. There are there's no, I don't know the person. He could have been or she could have been perfect, wrong time. Maybe you were resistant. But a really good counselor
Exactly.
also a lot of times knows how to work with that too. So, you
Mhm.
know, I don't know what happened, but here's what I say to you. There is, when you said that, you didn't find any understanding, there is, I can tell you this as a professional, okay? There's nothing that you
Mhm.
have described so far that a a really good professional, somebody with real clinical training, there's nothing you've described that that they wouldn't understand. And if they don't understand what you've talked about, then find another counselor. Maybe this is an area they hadn't dealt with, but I can't imagine that you could go to many that somebody's not going to say, well, of course I understand this. I can help you. So I want you to do a little counselor
Right.
shopping. Okay, you're a consumer. You get to make the decision and go get
Mhm.
some, a couple of good referrals from maybe your church, maybe not. I don't know if your church even has good referrals or not. Perhaps they do, but call
Mhm.
1-800 New Life. Call, go to your primary care doctor, your gynecologist. They oftentimes have really good referral lists. There's
Okay.
talk to people you talk to, but I really want you to go talk to somebody that's understand this because this is very understandable. And
Okay.
stonewalling is it's a protection and it's a reenactment. And you're going to learn as you process this, A, your husband is not your dad. Okay.
Right.
B, that the patterns that you needed to relate to your dad with are not the patterns that you want to relate to your husband with. And you learn some new ones as it's safer to be able to become vulnerable there. And a good counselor can help you with that. Okay.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're
Great.
at the time mark here,
Yes.
but thank you for your call and thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cloud. And I am praying for your surgery.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really
Thank
appreciate that.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you for your
So
time. Bye bye.
thank you. We are at the end of the hour on this show from the road. Um, thank you for. I've got a couple of messages from a few people that were praying for your surgery. It it's not out of the ordinary. It's not simple, but it's not the most complicated. It's just it's a painful process, from what I understand. The rehab. I am getting a total knee replacement. I just don't have a knee anymore. They looked in there and there's not one there. It's just there's oatmeal and some gravel and some duct tape, and that's pretty much all that's there. So if any of you've been to any events where I've spoken in the last probably year or two, you've seen me barely crawl up on the stage, kind of, trying to get the next step, thinking I could, try to ward this thing off with PT and a bunch of other stuff, but it's just getting worse. So anyway, I do appreciate your prayers. Pray for a good outcome, no complications, and magically painless recovery rehab. I'll report back into you to see if that happens. But I appreciate your prayers. This is the Dr. Cloud Show. Remember, every day we're here. There'll be a couple of weird things this week, but watch for the times. We'll be here in some form or fashion. Be live tomorrow at some point. And also go to boundaries.me, guys. If you've never gone there and checked it out, this is a great time to do it. I am so excited about these changes that we've made and the paths that you can sign up for and the search engines that are there and all this great stuff. It is a virtual, without a degree, it's kind of like a graduate education in all of these different issues that we talk about. So go visit us at boundaries.me and share the program with your friends. And thanks for your support in my journey this week. And we will see you tomorrow. Okay. Bye-bye.